Hey guys, Chad Hoover, and today we're going to take a look at what's in my BlackPak. All right, so 2 years ago, we shot a video of what was in my BlackPak, and it was a snapshot of what was in my BlackPak at that time. So right now it is the second week of April. It's the first day when it's been warm out like this, and we decided to shoot some video. Now, what I'm doing is I posted the questions on the Kayak Bass Fishing members only page, the Kayak Bass Fishing group, and here on the YouTube channel, and I'm taking your questions and answering them. Now, unfortunately, about 15 people said, hey man, show us what's in your BlackPak. So I did that video a while back. I'll link it up in the description box right now. But this is a lot like when your mom tells you to make sure you wear clean underwear so that you don't end up in the hospital or something like that with, with bad underwear. Actually, I just don't wear any, so that saves me in that regard. But here's the deal. I have not prepped my BlackPak, so you're gonna see kind of what's in there from the hodgepodge of the last couple trips that I've been on. And because of the evolution of how I fish with the Bonafide SS127, the junk drawer underneath my seat has become kind of a extension, if you will, to the BlackPak. So what I'm gonna do is just kind of open the BlackPak and show you what's in it. So here we go. So we're gonna open this thing up. Now keep in mind, this is raw. I haven't organized it. And generally what I have on top is I have my weights box, the terminal tackle stuff. And so what I've got in here right now, late winter coming into spring, is I've got my weights box. I've got some Woo tungsten, some finesse stuff, some drop shot weights, some tungsten nails, some finesse stuff. I've got some different size jig heads, some structure type jig heads, some football jig heads for screwing plastics onto. I've got a few scrounger heads in here. Those always come in handy when the bite is slow. I've got quite a few screw locks in here. I use the screw locks for basically the keel weighted hooks, but I also use them for putting trailers on certain types of baits. So a lot of these keel weighted hooks have a screw lock on them, but I like to also just use those screw locks for skirts on spoons and for putting trailers, spinner blades and things like that, soft plastic trailers on other baits. Lots of stand-up jigs and some Ned rig heads in my box this time of year. And then I really like these standard ball style stand-up heads. Where we at right here? I like these, sorry, give me a second. Yeah, here we go. I like these ball style heads for fishing worms and crawfish style baits. They're not quite a structure head. They're not quite a football head. They're just a ball head. And so that's kind of my terminal tackle box. I do keep a few swim bait heads in there and multi-rig lure baits. And then of course a good assortment of hooks that are the backups to the hooks that are in my PFD, because I use my PFD primarily for my hooks. So I've always got a couple of bags of plastics in here. What I'm running, primarily right now is some finesse style worms, some shaky head type stuff, some bubblegum trick worms. Probably should have took this out before I showed you guys this, because I love that bait right there. It catches a lot of fish. You don't see me talking about that a lot, but the bubblegum worm catches a lot of fish. And then I've got a double bagger here. What this double bagger is this is a lot of swim bait style baits. I've got the Storm Wild Eye Shad, and then I've also got the Rage Tail Swimmers. And the reason that I've got them double bagged in Ziplocs is I like to marinate or soak these bad boys in some Cox juice, and that really keeps them nice and juicy and ready to get devoured. So that's all swim baits in there, all different sizes, anything from the pre-made Wait Inside, Wild Eye Storm, things that are just killer, on down to the Rage Tail Swimmers, 3, 4, and 5 inch. I've got them all in there. And then when you're fishing really clear creeks, that thing right there, that clear minnow from Zoom, sometimes that'll catch them when nothing else will, man. That thing is just deadly. really big tail, kind of oversized for the body. And yeah, I've got some secret stuff in here that I can't, well, I can show you. It's all the same. You know, basically the old Power Team lures, swing and hammer. Got a couple of them in there. Got a bigger tail, a lot more action. So I like to mix it up. I like to mix all those up. My next thing is another bag of these swim baits. So I think you might find out that the recurring theme is that I like to throw a lot of hollow body swim baits. I like to throw those Strike King minnows. I like to throw some oversized flukes. It's the shad bite, you know? The shad are moving out of the creeks. The bass are feeding up for the spawn. I do like to drop down to some smaller ones, you know, every now and then. Not necessarily matching the hatch, just kind of varying it up a little bit. I like a little less lift sometimes than those bigger baits so I can reel them a little faster. And so that's the plastics. So let me throw these out of here so that I can show you the rest of what's in there. So that's 4 bags of plastics. Actually, I didn't show you what was in this one. So if I don't, you guys will be like, wait a minute, you didn't show me what was in that other one. So these are some culprit beetles. I like these when I want a buoyant bait. I can inject these with air and get them to stand up on their end. They work really great on the stand-up style heads. I like the Yamamoto Zakos for that same thing. But when I want to inject air in them and make them stand up, that culprit water beetle has more volume. I honestly don't think they make it anymore, so I bought like 1,500 of them when they were going out of style, and I just have a case of them. Always got some flukes. I like the Zoom flukes if I'm trying to fish the upper part of the water column, and I like the Yamamoto flukes if I'm trying to fish the middle to lower part of the water column because they're a little heavier, and I've got both styles. I've just got the Yamamoto down in some juice and marinating in here in the Cox juice, just like we talked about. One of my favorite baits is that Yamamoto Zako. I'll show you that on a couple of trailer baits in just a second, but my hands are getting kind of saturated with Cox juice right now, so I'm gonna move on to the other boxes. It really does taste like sugar smacks when you inadvertently touch your finger to your mouth and you've got some Cox juice on there. But anyway, we're gonna go on down to the next weight box. This is gonna be more of my go back to box if I don't find what I need in the other box. But I've got some wacky rigs in here, some old bullet weights, some cheap closeout stuff that I found. And really this is the buddy box. This is the box for when the guy with me didn't bring enough stuff. I can hand him this. This is crap that I've picked up on clearance over the years. And yeah, so this is really the buddy box. So moving on past that, my primary box is the other weighted box. Next thing you're gonna always find is, again, swim baits. These are some custom pour hollow body swim baits that I had made to get the colors that I wanted a little different. I've always got the mustad keel weighted hooks that go with them and some mustad oversized hooks if I want to put a bullet weight in front of it. But really the idea behind this box is I've got everything I need for swim bait fishing. I've got some of these elite bullet jig heads from Mustad in there. I've got my hooks for fishing them weightless or for adding a weight to the front. And then I've got my keel weighted mustads. But I'm fishing these things year round, but really late winter into early spring, all the way up until that spring to summer transition. I really fish the heck out of them because they have a lot of air captured in the body. They've got a lot of surface area, so you can reel them slow, fish them slow, and catch a lot of fish. Now, this thing right here, I mean, I'm not gonna get into great detail, but if the water's cool or cold or any combination of the above, and you don't have jerk baits in your box, you are wrong. Jerk baits are great search baits. They're great. Keep the lure in their face for a long time with the long pauses. I use a mix of primarily Strike King, but I do have some Lucky Craft mix in, and I do have a few Rapala in here, but primarily Strike King covers all my needs. Like I said, I've got a few that are more about the color that I switched to a Lucky Craft than the actual action, and I just want that darker barred profile where there's a lot of perch. But jerk baits, when the water's cold, all the way up to still cool but not hot yet, I do really well pre-spawn, in the spawn, all the way through post-spawn with jerk baits. And I probably use those more than most people, but you should have a jerk bait box in your BlackPak, especially this time of year. Now, this one, you might not like think I really have in here on purpose. You might think that it's crazy, but anytime the bass start moving into the spawn phase, I've got a toad box in here. I've got a couple white Zakos rigged up to throw on the bed, and I'm just a big fan of these freaking toads. Now, what I will do with these toads is I'll overweight them with a keel weight hook and throw it out and let it sink slowly to the bottom. And when it lands, it looks a lot like a crawfish in a defensive posture. And because of that weight on those legs, if that female swims up to it and moves a little bit, it brings them to life, and she flat hammers it. And a lot of times when you jiggle it, the body collapses and creates air bubbles that come out of there, and it looks like a crawfish's body releasing air bubbles, and that's pretty deadly. You can also Texas rig these with a flipping weight and pitch them past the bed and drag them in and let the line out, and it'll float up, and then when you pull it, it goes back down, and it looks a lot like a brim attacking a bed. So don't think of them as just top toads. Think of them as a hollow body bait that you can get to do a lot of different things. Moving on up, look, I fish a lot of dirty water, and you need a dirty water plastics box. In this box, I've got some brush hogs, I've got some craws in plum, in June bug, solid black, and then solid black with red flake. And then I've got them in June bug with emerald fleck. I really like those. And then of course, a lot of times I've got these really small pincher, molten crawfish looking, easy to eat, easy to digest, crawfish imitations. This is a missile D-bomb, and I love that bait. I love that the ribbed body gives off some air bubbles as it falls through the water column. And yeah, I've always got some of them in the boat. I really like the Yamamoto flapping hog for the weight and for the salt and all that good stuff. But if I want a finesse bait and I'm using a really small crawfish, I'm fishing the creek or the cracks and rocks in a river, or if I'm fishing pressured water where everything and their brother's been thrown at them on the bed, I'll switch to that smaller D-bomb and flat smash them. That thing is deadly. So a little bit of everything in my plastics box. Notice that spring runoff in the south creates a lot of dirty water. Dirty water means you need dark plastics, and I've got a lot of dark plastics. So then I've got just kind of a catch-all spring box, and that's got a little bit of everything. Some whopper ploppers, some different color square bills. You know, when the shad bites on these little square bills, from wake baits to super shallow divers, work really well. I've got again, I'm just coming to you natural here. I stuck this spinnerbait back in that box just because, you know, that's a color that I do really well with. A double willow leaf, like I've talked about in my other videos, that's got a lot of lift, it's got a lot of flash, and it's got a lot of thump. And so that bait does really well. You know, a buddy of mine turned me on a long time ago to this purple, lavender, violet color. I've never shared this before, and I didn't intend on sharing it, really, because this is a tournament trick. This time of year, there's something about the shad when they start to move out, but they get that purple, lavender, they're kind of translucent, so maybe you're seeing the blood through their skin. Maybe it's a psychological thing and I'm full of crap, but that purple, lavender, kind of pearl with the orangish purple, you know, kind of blended belly, man, that thing is just freaking deadly this time of year. You know, I've been experimenting with this technique right here, and I've done really well with it. I haven't done a video on it yet because I haven't got enough confidence in it to, you know, come across like I know what I'm doing. This got popular, and I've been trying it. I've actually been reeling this across the top like a top water as much as I've been spy rigging it. This is a spy bait that you're supposed to let fall to a countdown depth and slow reel it. But I've caught fish as deep as 8 feet on this, and I've caught them as shallow as 6 inches, 6 inches below the surface in, you know, 3 to 4 foot of water. But that bait right there is something you should definitely have tied on just to mix it up a little bit. I like the tiny torpedoes early in the spring when those frogs are just starting to get active in that frog color. I like they don't make it anymore, but this little Yamamoto topwater right here is a little bit like a Sammy. It's a little bit like a Sexy Dog Junior from Strike King. And I changed it out to the triple grip hooks to give it a little bit better hookup ratio in cold water. It walks good, it searches, stays in the strike zone when I fish it slow. That thing right there is phenomenal. And I bought up about 50 of those when I found out that they were not going to be continuing to make them. So, you know, I've got sponsors, they take good care of me. And sometimes the anglers just don't respond as good as they should to a bait. That doesn't mean it doesn't work well, and it doesn't mean I'm gonna stop using it. And then that little dude right there, a little Skitterwalk Junior. Early on, I like switching between a Spook and this Skitterwalk Junior. I don't know why I like the blue chrome with the white belly with the orange throat, but I just do. If you got a close-up of this thing, you would see where it's actually cracked up and it has been mauled and beat up, and this is only for this year. And yes, I'm throwing top water already. I start throwing top water as soon as the water gets in the 50s. I don't care if it's 50.2, I'll throw a top water. I don't work it as fast, and a lot of times I'll use a popper and do the bloop bloop and stop, but I start throwing a top water real early, like soon, like very early, because generally the surface is the first part of the water column to warm up, and generally they move shallow. So that is that. That's, guys, this is not one of those best lures for spring videos. This is not one of those, you know, top 5 baits for spring. This is not one of those videos. This is literally, you asked and I answered, what's in my BlackPak? What's in my BlackPak right now has evolved, because now that I use the old trusty SS127, I've got the junk drawer. And in the junk drawer, I've got a few more things. I've got some, this is actually just a flipping weights box, because I do like to flip deep cover. I like to use a flipping setup to go into deep cover when I'm structure fishing or deep cover fishing. That's just a little trick I do. So I've got that in the box. I have a little small shad imitation box here that's at the ready under the seat, and it's got a little prop style bait in it from Lunker Hunt. It's got a live target gizzard shad, or threadfin shad, I'm sorry. It's got a brim swim bait in it. I don't know if you can see this or not, but I got 3 of these in the box. If I got 3 of these in the box, that ought to tell you something. I've got one in a dark color, one in a natural color, and one in a light color. And that's a little prop spin bait from Lunker Hunt, and it is a very subtle whopper plopper that's weedless, for lack of a better way of putting it. Those are those 2 little boxes. I've got a little box here that's kind of my catch-all box. I really like to fish brim patterns this time of year. So this Zako trailer, or Zako just fished Texas rigged on a tube hook from Mustad, is phenomenal. This is kind of an oversized version of what that hook looks like, so you can get a good look at it, but it's that kind of hook. Rig the Zako up on it, fish it with a bullet weight. I also like to fish this Zako on a jig, a skirted jig right there. That is a skirted structure head. It comes through a lot of stuff quickly, clean. I can put that on there. I got low bulk, got a lot of action, and then I've got a weed guard. So that's deadly. I've got a Z-Man, couple Z-Man jigs in here. These do really well. The skirts they're crinkled skirts. They've got a lot of action even when they're sitting still. Got a couple Strike King football jig heads in here. I've got a Missile Baits, little Mike Iaconelli flipping jig with a crawl trailer on it. That is deadly. And then I've got those in a couple of other different colors. That's another 1/2 ounce pumpkin crawl, Strike King. And then I always like these structure bug styles with the articulating head. Again, this is a Strike King. I had a Zako trailer to that thing and crossed their eyes. And then this is one of my go-tos after the water gets out of the late high 40s and into the 50s, and that is a chatterbait with a Zako trailer on it. That thing is deadly right there. That's a Z-Man. That thing is phenomenal. I cross a lot of eyes with that. Here's another 1 ounce version of it. It's a lot heavier, and it's got a swimbait trailer on it, which is basically the Strike King Rage Tail. After I tear them up fishing them Texas rigged, then I save them and cut them off and turn them into trailers for my chatterbaits. Again, I really like these flukes with the little spinner behind them. I make those myself, and sometimes I also buy them commercially made. I don't even know who makes that one. A lot of times I just tie the the split ring on there with braid, heat shrink over it, or paint it with electrical tape. It creates a split ring attachment for a blade, and that adds a little finesse to it. Like I talked about earlier, there's one of those hollow body swim baits with the keel weight. The reason I like this keel weight is you can move it up and down the hook shank, so you can change how that bait, whether it falls horizontal or it nose over and falls vertical. So this is in my box in the junk drawer, so it's at the ready, as I like to call it. And then this dude right here, holy crap, can you break some faces, jack some jaws with a black and chartreuse 1 ounce Colorado blade. It's a number 6 blade, 1 blade. I like to reel it. I like to bend the wire down so that when I stop reeling it and I raise my rod tip, that blade clinks against that hook shank, and man, they just flat annihilate that thing. So I like it early, I like it late, I like it when the sun's really high. So pretty much any time before daylight, right at daylight, till the sun gets up above the trees, midday for the sun being almost vertical, and then later in the evening, and then of course at night. That thing right there flat knocks them out. So number 6 gold Colorado blade. If you've watched my other videos, sometimes I like to darken one side of the blade. What that does is it blinks, it makes it gold black, gold black. It makes it harder for them to pick up the pattern and harder for them to see that bait and identify it as a fraud. But dirty water, stained water, clear water, it doesn't matter. It does really well in stained water, but it surprisingly with that gold blade and that chartreuse skirt, it does really well in clear water, and I flat break their face with it. Like a lot. All right, one more box to show you guys, and then we're gonna be done with the walk through the BlackPak and the extension of the BlackPak. And this box right here is loaded with tubes. So I had this box set up this way because this is all I fished on a recent trip. I fished a jig, there's a little Strike King football jig. I had that with no trailer. I was fishing it deep and fast, trying to cover water, fishing it through a mussel bed. I started early, and in the feeding time, I threw this full-size Strike King sexy dog, and I leave a tick of fishing line on lures that I catch fish on. If I don't catch a fish, I clip it off. That's just a little mental thing that I do. And so when you see me do videos and they got a little piece of line stuck on there, that's the one I catch fish on. I didn't catch them on the scatter shad, and yeah, so I threw that a bit, didn't catch them on it, switched over to another spinnerbait, caught them, and but now I want to show you the last but not least. This thing right here is flat deadly. I like these oversized tubes, and there's a company that makes this little flat blade right here. I'll link it up in the description box. It's a little tube, and what you do is you just stick this thing inside. I mean, it's a little tube weight, little disc. You just force this thing down inside, just like so. It spreads that tube out, gives it a lot of bulk. It makes it land, hook up all the time. It flutters going through the water column. You want to work that tube all the way down, just like that. And then you want to poke that hook through and tie it off. Man, you can reel that thing up in the water column, and it's got a profile a lot like a brim. You can hop and pop it. You can drag it on the bottom, kicking up silt. You can get it on the bottom and jiggle your line so that it kicks the nose up and it looks like a crawfish. This thing right here is flat deadly. They make these hooks in 2 different sizes. And again, I will link them up in the description box so you can go find them for yourself. But a tube is like an hors d'oeuvre for a bass this time of year. The crawfish are starting to come out of the ground. The water's coming back up. As the water covers where the crawfish went into the ground before it went down in the wintertime, those crawfish will start to come back out, and those bass will flat chaw on them. Early in the season, actually a lot of times, I don't like to use too big of a claw, because a big claw is saying I've got a big defense mechanism. You know, would you rather fight a little kid with a spoon or a big kid with a ninja sword? And so when you think about that, and a bass has got the opportunity to eat a crawfish with little tiny pinchers or eat one with big pinchers, he's going to choose the tiny pinchers because it's easier to digest, it's easier to fight. You don't have to expend as much energy grabbing it and shaking it. You guys have probably seen the video of the smallmouth doing that. So I like to use like in the D-bomb, I like to use unassuming pinchers, not overbearing, something that gives a little bit of action. And that tube is always in my box, you know, except for the dog days of summer or the really hot part of summer. I've got a tube tied on, and the tube is one of my go-tos. So guys, that is it. Last but not least, the one thing that I got in my boat that I've been throwing is this little Savage Gear brim. like a pumpkin seed. It's got a little turned up nose, treble on the bottom, major regular hook on the top, and that thing is dusty from riding around in my BlackPak or in my junk drawer, but that thing is flat deadly. I don't catch tons and tons and tons of fish on it, but when I do catch fish on this, you know, they're 3 pounds or better. But when I also go to a bed and I can't get them to eat anything else, I'll put some scent on it and I'll hold it by the tail, and then I'll just flip it out and just slow swing, like a swing reel it into the bed, let it hit, and when it hits, it pretty much stands up just like that. Well, it's not gonna stand up. Yeah, there you go. So it just stands up on the hook, and they flat annihilate it. And I like that. You can also throw this thing and wind and grind it like a spinnerbait, and just hang on, because you might get your hand broke. Anyway, guys, I know this was a long video and I know it had a lot of content, but you asked and I answered. That's what's in my YakAttack BlackPak.